Thanks everyone. I am excited to talk about me. No, not really, but I'm using myself as a base here for how to kind of approach different mediums. The list that Ethan read off is kind of indicative of I do so many different things, and so how I kind of approach each one with the ideas that I have, or perhaps the opposite direction, work medium out. I'm like, I want to make a X thing. How do I do that? What's the best option for that? So that's what I'm going to talk about, and feel free to. This is a conversation because so much of making things is just ideas. So it's not a set in stone anything. So I'm happy to have conversations about things. I'm just real quick going to breeze through why I'm qualified to talk about so many things is because of my breadth of work. So a lot of these are things that I feel are a really good example of different mediums, like what they offer and how you have to think about them and what makes them different and what makes the ideas have to kind of conform to it. Especially because something like podcast being an audio-only medium really changes what you're capable of doing versus something like installation work, which has a different expectation when you engage with it. So that's my biggest kind of thought process here. But this is my big disclaimer. Anything you make can be whatever you want. I'm not in charge of you, but I want to do my best to not moralize or invalidate any mediums in this particular speech. This goal is to talk about how I approach my work and not the validity of any medium in any particular way. There's no right answer to this. I'm going to talk about my process, but I'm not going to give anybody a step-by-step because that's not the goal here. And this is my personal experience and expertise, so it's not entirely comprehensive. I still have a lot to learn, so that's the fun part about doing art is you just figure it out. So when I talk about approaching the medium, what does presentation mean? And for me, that means how the idea gets shown into the world. Who gets to see it based on who your intended audience is versus who actually sees it versus who accidentally sees it. I think that's a big part of it. And then in this particular situation, I'm talking about presentation of like narrative fictional ideas. That's typically what I do the most, but anything can be presentation. I was thinking about this in the ways of the billboards you see on the street, the YouTube ads you see are all ways that things are presented to you, all ideas. And I'm presenting, stories and concepts rather than advertising, but that's not an invalid way to go about it. Everything you see, someone has made. And then medium, I have my notes here. What is a medium? Well, it's the best word I can think of to describe any way that you encounter a story, art, information, anything that comes to you. Because I could just say, well, video, but I also do podcasts. I could say art, but I also do comedy. There's all entertainment versus theater, all of it. So medium is the best umbrella term I have for this particular situation. And then consciously or unconsciously, anyone creating something is making a decision based off of the medium and the platform that they're using. Whether or not you're thinking about it is totally irrelevant if you're just thinking of mediums, but it's also the process of it. And the medium itself influences the content. I've noticed this in making the variety of things that I do make, because if I make something for one thing and I make a similar idea for a different medium, it's a whole different experience. And then your audience expectation can influence or irritate is the word I have, the final piece. And I meant that more in if you want to go against expectations, you're irritated because you feel like somebody expects something of you and you don't feel like that's the way that you want to go about it. So then your final piece is opposite or different or I don't care, whatever that means. So you're creating something opposite of the expectations. And then your goals can also influence your medium. So I have a big list of mediums, and this is not encompassing because there are so many ways that you can encounter a medium. I'm approaching this from the perspective of narrative storytelling, even though I have included like advertising, but there's plenty of ads we've seen that have narratives to them, or something that's got an encompassing element to it. I have a ton of friends who write, so that's a huge medium, is any kind of like novelization of something. And I just think of like all the different ways that you can present something, and all the different ways that you can tell a story, and all the different ways that you can just put imagery out there, even if it's not actual imagery. Tons of imagery is evoked with like an audio-only format, any kind of podcasting or audiobook or something like that. You can create imagery without actually creating imagery. So there's a ton of different mediums. But I also think about like how often you encounter something like this, even just based like on video alone. You watch a YouTube video, you watch a TV show, you see an ad, you see a video billboard. How often are we encountering things like that? The other question that you can come with this is like, does the quality of the medium affect the category it's in? So if we say, so this is actually a really great one, the two next to each other, studio entertainment and online entertainment. Does the quality of it affect what category you put it in, how we're categorizing it? Because if we're saying if I've created of my own money and my own budget, something I've put just on YouTube, but everyone thinks that this is this $1 million project, which it's not, but pretend that it is, right? Does that put it into a TV category? Is that TV now? I tell people that the streaming show I do is TV because it's on television. It's on community access media, so it is on television, but does the quality of it affect people's perception of it? So we're going down a rabbit hole, but that's this whole thing. It's just rabbit holes all the way down. So I think that that's something, even within the category itself, we have subcategories. Using music, for example, if the quality of it is, I recorded it on my iPhone, does that change how we feel about it as far as, oh, I recorded it in a multi-million-dollar studio? Like, is that a different subcategory? Do we feel the validity of it is changed? Do we approach it differently? I feel like there's also the expectation of, well, I recorded it at home in my garage, maybe I don't care as much, or maybe I care so much. So there's no right answer to any of it, but it's one of those things of you have to think about how people are going to interpret the quality of it, and do you use that to your advantage? One of the things I talk about a lot, and I haven't seen it, and I really wish I could. I was in college at the time. There was a horror movie that was being filmed entirely through Snapchat. And they released it live through Snapchat. So you had to be following the Snapchat account, and then you were getting the whole movie live as it was happening. And first of all, I loved it. But second of all, that was taking the medium that it's first not made for movies and creating an experience from it. And then is the quality of that change, the expectations of what we think it is, and then we're expecting something, are we feeling like it's real, are we being bamboozled by it? So it's a lot of, the medium was dictating what they were capable of doing. They were capable of making something in a specific format, and they had to utilize the resources around them. I think I was reading that they only did like 3 takes or something like that, so they were really limited to how many takes they could do. They had to do it live because Snapchat is like a 24-hour, I think. I haven't used Snapchat in a really long time. But there's so many interesting ways to take what the expectation of the category is and use it or don't use it and don't think about it. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of process. There's 2 ways that we can go with what I'm talking about. We can start with a concept or we can start with a medium. Most people don't start with a medium. Most people start with the concept. We're kind of not even thinking about medium 9 times out of 10. But if we start with a concept and we're going with the concept with no expectations of what medium it's in, the idea can influence the medium, can pick it. Oh, I want to make this thing. Oh, that means it should be a podcast, it should be a novel, it should be whatever. If we start with a medium, the medium is already going to influence the limitations of the concept. I need to make a podcast. Well, I certainly can't do anything that doesn't have any dialogue. We've lost the medium already. And a really good example for a medium out approach too is, for me, commissioned work. So if I'm doing something and someone hires me to do a music video, then I have to make a music video. I can't make a theater piece. I can't make a podcast. I've been hired to make a music video. I'm going to make a music video. So already I'm approaching it from I have to work medium in. Now, usually that's not something people have to think about of what medium they're doing. But if I'm already thinking, oh, I have to make a music video, I'm not writing something for it. I'm not creating a narrative around it that's scripted. I'm already using music or anything kind of expectations of that already. And then the concept kind of bounces around within it. It's like I've made a little box and then I can kind of bounce around within that box. I'm gonna move forward with the rest of this, starting with the concept, but a lot of these concepts can kind of cycle back to starting with the medium. So it's all cyclical. Okay, so when we start with a concept, you ask yourself, what do I want to say with this? Your goals are gonna influence the medium. I want to make a really long narrative story. Okay, maybe that's a novel, maybe that's a podcast, maybe that's a feature-length film. But if I want to make a really long story, it's certainly not a TikTok video. So there's like an expectation of what your goals equal into the medium. And there's no right answer for any of this. This is just like the thought process behind it. Do you start with the medium and make the idea, or do you make the idea with the medium in mind? So I need to make a podcast. Okay, I want to make a podcast. I want to make it X amount of time. I want to do this, this, and this. Or I have this idea, and I know it's going to be really good as a feature-length film because they mesh together. And then this is a really fun question. I feel like this is also me just asking myself hard questions that I never really do. But are you focused on reception or creation? It's a huge question, and this comes up a lot with folks who are making things for like entertainment purposes. Are you trying to cater to an audience so that they enjoy it or watch it or share it or pay you money for it? Or are you, I'm gonna make a theater piece because I'm gonna make a theater piece, and that's a thing you can do because art, you can't stop it. You can't stop the train of art. But what are you trying to get out of it? And that's going to be the process. I want to make a piece that people are going to engage with because I'm making it and I'm putting it on, I'm projecting on the side of a building and I want them to look at it and see it and engage with it. Okay, I need to think of who's the audience, what do they want, or maybe what do I want to challenge them with? But I'm already thinking of the reception of the piece rather than I'm just sitting here putting Lego blocks together. And none of those are invalid ways to go about it, but it's the intention of your creation process. And I feel like that's really important to examine, even if you're just like, well, I'm just doing it. You can just do it. You're examining it, at least a little bit. This is a fun one. What is your emotional response to the creation of this work? Are you doing this ironically, intentionally, experimentally, to try to like get something out of your system? I had that conversation with someone recently. It's like, this sounds like you're working through some stuff with this thing you're making. And that, a lot of artists do that. Do you want to make something because I think it would be funny to make a piece about pasta? Yes, absolutely. Why not? But it's the emotional response. And I always think about the emotional response to anything because almost all works of any kind of imagery, whether or not it's visual or not, has an emotional response to it, which is why people love Super Bowl commercials. They have an emotional response to it, even if it's just, that was funny, that was hilarious, I'm gonna share that with my friends. There's not, and I think a lot about people that share, hey, you should read this thing, you should watch this thing. They're having an emotional response to it. Nobody ever looks at it and goes, well, the logical thing that I feel about this art piece or this novel I read is this. It's mostly in the narrative fiction, but even in like, advertising or comedy or things like that. But even things that are logical, you still have an emotional response to. So I think that's so much of creation is based on emotions. And even if you think you're not doing something emotionally, you are. I don't think there's a way around that. And then this next bit I have is the questions you ask yourself about these ideas. And these are sometimes questions I sit down and ask myself, and sometimes these are questions that just after the fact I realize I've been asking myself. What kind of story do you want to tell? Who are you making this for? What external ideas are you being influenced by? What is achievable in the time frame you have to create it? What do you want the viewer to take away from this, and what medium best serves your idea? And this last one is really the core of this presentation here. And I don't know if a lot of folks go down this question asking path, because I think most people who create things have a very specific medium they enjoy working within. But I also have some folks in my life who I think maybe they could benefit from thinking of their ideas in a different medium. Sometimes their ideas, they're so used to working in one way that it might not be detrimental to the idea to transfer it somewhere else. But yeah, these are definitely questions that I feel are important to be asking. I don't think, even if you say the answer to all of these is blasé, what kind of story do you want to tell? Whatever, who are you making this for? Whoever, what external ideas are you being influenced by? I don't know, everything. What is achievable? I don't know. You still are creating a choice to it. And even if that choice is, I'm just fuck it doing whatever, that's still a choice, and that is still a part of the process and the emotion being put into it, which you're never emotionless when you're making something. And I think that a lot of these things too, they don't have to be deep, dark feelings, emotions, because I love making comedy. I love doing entertainment. I love doing things that have no greater depth to them, but that's still an answer. What kind of story do you want to tell? A fun story, an entertaining story, a comedic story. Who am I making this for? Somebody who needs a bit of reprieve from something happening in their life. What external ideas am I being influenced by? I'm going to make a parody of general content that people are used to seeing. And so those are still choices I'm making, and I'm still having an emotional connection to that. And sometimes that emotional connection is just like, I want to offer something silly to the table when everybody else needs something, very deep and dark. There's a place for all of it, but I need to know that I am approaching this concept from the perspective of, for fun. We're playing, and I think playing is incredibly important. If we're talking about the medium first, what about the medium will influence the piece? That's my biggest question, biggest piece. That's kind of the thesis statement of this whole thing, is what about the medium influences the piece? Because if you don't think about those things, you're not considering maybe that outside perspective that an audience might bring to it. And these all kind of fall under that too. Who will be the unintended audience because of the medium, and what is the culture surrounding the medium? And I think a lot about this in terms of the entertainment that I do. When I do something to a platform, a name-branded platform, YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, whatever, there's a cultural expectation of the content that is being made on those platforms. And there's a wide variety, and there's certainly like subgenres under it. But when someone uploads something to YouTube, there's an expectation, especially if you go with the like clickbait style content. Okay, I'm gonna get a video of somebody talking and using very broad gestural and jump cuts and things like that. And the culture around it is the comment section is gonna be full of people high-fiving each other because they agree with what's being said. And even if that's not what you're making, but you're kind of alluding to it and you're part of that culture, that is going to be what is expected of it and what influences people's perception of the piece. And I think I was having a conversation today with someone about languages. We were talking about French versus German versus English, and I was talking about how even in English, the cultural kind of little dances that you do when you go in, hi, how are you? I'm good, how are you? Oh, good, thanks for asking. That's different in the South versus in like the North versus, somewhere in PA versus somewhere in New York. Like it's all different culturally. But when you go and you have that cultural expectation, when I say, hi, how are you? You say, oh, I'm good, how are you? You're like expecting that culturally. And that's the same with any kind of platform that you've put something on. You're expecting some kind of cultural interaction, even if it is just that base level You're not thinking about it when you go into it. So when you put something on a platform, even if it is opposite of what that platform typically has, there's an expectation of culture. And it's the same as if you are an American and you go to France and they don't care, right? Like you say something kind of half wrong in French, they're going to immediately start speaking to you in English because you've done it wrong. Like that's the cultural expectation, and so you're opposite of their culture, and so you split from it, but they already know that's part of it. So it's the same when you're like, okay, I'm on a platform that doesn't culturally do this thing. There's still an expectation even if you subvert it. You still have to like tell them you're subverting it, basically. And then the other thing is like, what's the engagement with it too? Because when you're creating something, people engage with it, and there's so many different ways you can engage with something. If you're in an online space, are you liking? Are you commenting? Are you sharing it? If you're doing something in a real life space, are you telling other people? Are you talking to people about it? Are you talking about people in that space? Are you talking to people outside that space? So there's an engagement with it, with any of the mediums that you're creating. It influences the different ways people talk about it or don't talk about it. That's a whole other cultural conversation we've kind of reached, of not talking about the things that we've consumed because there's so much. We want to talk about oversaturation. It's a whole other conversation. But I'm going to move on real quick to how an audience consumes your work. All of these things influence the expectations of your medium. So, and this is not, I can break this down even further, but all of these are things that are almost cultural of each piece, and they influence the way that you view something. Well, a great example of this, I had a professor in college who would bemoan if you would watch Lawrence of Arabia on a desktop. Like, they could only be watched in cinema because it was made for cinema. It was shot big. Those big shots are meant to be all-encompassing around you. And so and at that time, when I was in college, I was like, that's kind of silly. It's accessible to me on my home computer, essentially. But now we've reached a point where it's not even an option to see things at that scale, at that intention. So when you're making something, what's your intention, but then how are the other ways that you can engage with the content? So if we're talking studio entertainment, this is top-down, big dogs. What are they making? But even if it's something in that category, the physical scale, and this is a great example, I did not make this presentation this big. I made it on this computer. I was like, these little circles, they're so small. And now I'm like, wow, those icons were not what I thought they would be. So the physical scale of it influences the interpretations and the expectations of that medium. And that's another conversation we can have about accessibility as well. If someone can't consume something on the scale it was intended to. I can't consume Lawrence of Arabia in a private cinema large enough for the way it's supposed to be viewed. Do I just not watch it at all? Do I watch it at the scale that I have access to? Do I watch it on desktop? Do I watch it on my phone? Like, if I scale it down, does it scale the actual, piece itself? Do I feel like it's a small story now if it's on a small screen? And even at the choices we can make, like home screen, so even if we say studio entertainment into streaming services, right, Netflix or whatever, the scale of it, I have choices. I can watch it on my desktop, I can watch it on my TV, I can watch it on my iPhone, I can watch it on my iPad. Does that change the concept itself? Do the big explosions not work on a tiny screen? Is it better on a tiny screen? Am I missing details because of it? Is it different if I put headphones on versus surround sound? All of those things influence what is being absorbed. But then we can have a conversation about visuals versus the script itself. If the story is good, doesn't matter how big it's scaled. If the story is still being presented to you in the way that it's intended, which is on a digital medium or a film medium, great. Physical location kind of goes with scale too, of large theater versus at-home options. If we go into online entertainment, and this kind of encompasses a lot of things, YouTube, Twitch, even short form scrolling media, what's the time frame is kind of a weird word for me to use, but I didn't have another way to describe something like live versus on demand. So if I'm using Twitch as an example, that's a streaming platform. You are live on Twitch at that moment. People know that, they can engage, they can chat, they can like get automatic feedback to prove that this person is live or these people are live. If I'm watching something on demand, I love watching stuff on YouTube, but I'm pausing it, I'm going to do my thing, I'm coming back, so I can kind of do it in whatever time frame. Am I missing the intended intention because I'm putting breaks in that weren't intended to be part of it? All kinds of things. And the same conversation with physical scale. A lot of online entertainment isn't made to be projected this large. I mean, you can, but that's not the intention of the process of it. This is my favorite. What is the consumer intention for watching online entertainment? And by this I mean, are you engaged or is it a background media? Now we put something on in the background to let noise play or to support people we like, but I can't really be there engaged, but I want to be there when their live stream is up. I'm going to put it up on my computer and be another number for them. Engagement in this particular setting, because engagement can mean a lot of things, influences what you get out of it. If we're half watching something, are we getting the whole story? Are we getting the whole intention behind it? Is it meant to be something that's put on in the background? I know plenty of YouTube creators that make things that are meant to be put in the background. I saw a video recently where the content creator was talking. They were talking about kinds of things, and they did video essays, and they made a point in one of their videos to say, if you are drawing while you're listening to this, check back in. I've got a really cool visual up on screen. They already know that their audience is not engaged with their visuals that they've created when they're making it, so they play into it. That's part of the expectations of their medium that they're doing. And then on top of that kind of same thing is the time for interaction, like you're scrolling versus conscious consumption. I think a lot about this with like short form vertical video content. How much of the stuff that is being made, and this is more from a creator's perspective, the time and the energy, or not time and energy, I suppose, for someone to go whoop, 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 we're not engaging with it. It's just become something that we zone out to. And that is something I've watched over, I think, about 10 years of the online entertainment and creation become expected to be a part of that just pool. The infinite scroll is actually infinite because the amount of video work online that exists in the world you could not watch before the world ended kind of deal. Like there's so much out there. There's so many things. And so how does that influence the way you make things? I'm going to make something and no one's going to see it. 2 people are going to see it. And how people engage with your work. Oh, I saw half a video. I didn't see it. I don't know. I liked it. I didn't write a comment. I just scrolled past it. And that changes the way that the information at the very minimum is being interpreted. What's my other thing? Same thing with the audio entertainment of like, is it engaged versus background noise? In-person entertainment, any level, I have scale of like community versus professional theater or music or even, I don't know, performance art, any of that scaling of budget and things like that changes how people are consuming it, engaging with it, expecting things. If I go into a Broadway show and they start doing a rendition of The Lion King holding up cardboard cutouts, I'm like, that's not what I expected walking into this, because I had an expectation of presentation based off of what I knew of that medium. And then the reverse side of it is you walk into a community theater production and something that you're like, oh, this is going to be fun and intimate and low budget, and they blow you out of the water because they've done something outside of your expectations. Great, lovely, wonderful. And then I was calling, maybe performance art falls under this, in-person contemplation. But galleries, video installations, things that you go in with the intention to have some kind of intellectual or non-intellectual experience. But contemplation was the word I was thinking, because when I go and see that kind of thing, I'm like, I want to spend time and look at it and read the work and look at it and think about it and what do I feel and all of that. But how are people engaging with it or consuming it is it sought out or is it stumbled upon? And this is something I found out when I did my gallery in 2022. I was on a public street and people will walk past and be like, what is this? What is happening? Or they would just, my favorite thing, so I had, oh gosh, 4 tube TVs in the window, I think I had, something like that. And I had like 2 or 3 people just stop me and start talking about the TVs that they had in their homes when they were younger. And I was like, okay, thank you. I also had one in my home when I was younger. Like the one person telling me, I was like, I know what this is. I have it. This is mine. But it was very funny. In the 80s, I was like, okay, sure. But that was not how it was intended to be consumed or engaged with. But because it was an accidental audience, I had to know that that was part of the process, the part of what was happening. And looking at the video that I made, not expecting to think about art, and it was I think people that wouldn't intentionally go out and look at gallery work or spend time and think about it, they were going to go home and watch their cable show, and that's fine. Again, no wrong way to consume anything. But what does my work look like to those people that have no idea what that means? They're not trying to think about anything. That was a man on a beach doing a newscast. I was like blowing everybody's mind. In fact, they weren't even paying attention to it. At a certain point, it was about the TVs. It was about the TVs themselves. So what does that change? What are they thinking about? And this is also kind of similar to what I was talking about, but all the different ways the audience can engage with your work. They can be engaged, it can be background, it can be they're scrolling really quickly, it can be constant consumption, they're gonna go and do that, they're gonna seek it out, they're gonna stumble across it. So those things I just talked about. And then how do you make sure you understand the reality of how an audience engages with a medium at large and at the scale you create? The reality of when I post something on YouTube and the algorithm pushes it to somebody and they don't know who I am, what's the reality of their expectations and what's the reality of what they see and what they engage with? They don't know who I am. They don't know what I'm doing. So what do they see? What do they expect? I was having this conversation about Twitch itself. So when I put things on Twitch, I'm typically doing like entertainment, somewhat scripted or improv based. Twitch is a gaming platform. It is where people go and they play video games. That is 90% of that platform. The other 10% is people doing art, essentially, doing a live stream of them doing art. And so when I go on there with something that is scripted or something that is very, very large scale, like narrative based, they're gonna engage with it from an element of the culture of the platform. So I have to understand that's the reality of it. In Twitch, in YouTube, when someone stumbles across it and then goes, what the fuck is this? Like, I have to understand that's the reality of how they're engaging with it. Whether or not I like it is a whole other conversation. When I make something that is installation work and it is in a location that people don't understand what that means, that's the reality of how they're engaging with it, of how they're seeing it, of how they're experiencing it. Whether or not I'm getting across them is a whole other part of it. And at a certain point, every medium, everything you ever create, you have to like let it go. But it's really hard when you're like, this is my child I've created from my arms. Like, I need you to understand what I'm trying to say. And so that's the part of why I go back and ask myself all these questions and think about the mediums and think about the cultures and think about what the expectations are. Because if I don't think about those things and then I get to a point where I'm like, well, nobody's understanding it, I've done something wrong at some point in the process. There should be at least one other person who understands what I'm trying to do, or else I'm then making it for me, and in which case, that's a whole other conversation. That is not this. Everything I'm talking about here, somebody has to engage with, because otherwise it's a different presentation altogether. Make stuff for you. I don't know what that means, because I'm been doing it too long for other people. So what changes when an audience engages differently with the work? When I'm making something and it's background noise and then suddenly it becomes a conscious consumer, what changes? What changes when it's somebody that stumbled across it, but then they actually engage with it or they think about it? What about the piece changes? And that's out of your control, but I think it's important to acknowledge that those are going to be parts of the process of thinking about those things. And a lot of this too, so much of making things is going, okay, this is maybe what ifs, and then going, okay, now I just have to make it. I've just got to do the thing. And what does engagement even mean? I don't have any notes for this slide because the answer is, it could be whatever you want. This is a conversation I have on multiple levels with a lot of different people. When I'm making something for entertainment, there's some more substantial things. I think it means X amount of viewers. It means X amount of sales. It means X amount of people who wrote a comment on it. When I did the gallery, this many people showed up. Like, what does that mean? And it's dependent on the piece, depending on what you're trying to get out of it. I could say that engagement for me is 10,000 people commenting on it. Then none of my things have ever been engaged with ever. Like, you have to decide what engagement means for the piece and for you. But I think the other thing to consider is somebody is doing something. And I think a lot about how my first ever installation piece I was in college, and it was part of a gallery night situation. It was a video piece, and it was 3 figures, and they were still for 30 seconds, and then they turned their heads and looked at you for 10, and then they turned back. And if you weren't staring at the piece, you wouldn't see it. And I hung it up in an antique shop. I used a frame from that antique shop, so it blended right into the wall. And I think only one person saw it move. And for me, looking back, that was a success because it's done what I wanted it to do, which was be like glazed over. You didn't think about it. You didn't expect it to do anything because you weren't sitting around long enough to see it do anything. But at the time, I was so sad. I was so sad that nobody saw it. All that work I put into it, nobody saw it. Nobody saw anything happen. But now I'm at a point where I feel like that was engagement. Somebody saw it, somebody looked at it, somebody thought, oh, wow, it did the thing. And then I talked about it after. It was an academic piece, so then there was whole kinds of conversations after, which is also engagement. Talking about things at a certain level with other people, making things is also engagement, even if it's not necessarily audience engagement. You're still getting something out of it, process-wise. For me, learning. That was the first piece I ever did. Okay, now I know. I either need to make something flashier, I need to make it part of a thing, I have to direct people there. I was standing there in the shop, but I was like really shy. I was like, I don't know, don't look at me. I don't know what I'm doing. So is that part of it? Do I have to point it out? If I point it out, does that change it? It's supposed to be a framed piece that looks like iconography. If I go, look at this iconography, wait for it to move, am I taking the intention of the piece, completely negating it? So I think that's a part of the mediums themselves too, like expectations. The expectation was the iconography doesn't move. I've subverted it, but because I've subverted it, I didn't get any engagement. So I've kind of created a ping pong effect with that particular piece. So all questions to ask. There's no correct answer as far as I can tell. It's just what you want to get out of it, which I think is more important. Because at the end of the day, you have to live with your own stuff you make. Okay, so kind of led right into it. I'm really good at this. How do you break the expectations of medium and content? So you have to ask yourself all those questions. You have to think about it. Do you understand what the expectations of the medium is, not in its entirety, but at least in a way that your audience might engage with it, or is it just from your perspective? I think about that a lot with Twitch. I don't watch Twitch for gamers. I'm not a gamer. It's fine. It's just not my thing. So when I'm on the platform, I don't really understand the expectations of the platform because I'm not a part of that community. I'm not a part of that culture. So then my perspective is warped on what I think that people are expecting to see on that platform. And in that particular situation, I can talk to people that engage with the platform as it's intended. I can go, oh, you're a gamer. You like watching people game. What do you get out of it? What do you expect from it? If I was to do a play on Twitch, what would you think? So I can kind of engage in that way of being like, how do I work with that? And then how do you creatively subvert the expectations in a way that doesn't make it so one person walks past your piece and you only have one person see your piece? How do you creatively subvert something? How do you make commentary on it? Because sometimes the subversion isn't necessarily subverting the expectations of the medium, but it's the content itself. Oh, I'm gonna wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Okay, that's my creative subversion of it. And the biggest example I have in my own work of creatively subverting expectations of a medium is my piece called The Outer Zone. Which was November 2020, so kind of after some stuff came back with COVID, but after I had done 2 digital theater pieces already. I had taken everything I had learned from those 2 pieces and went, I can do this better. And it was a live performance. We did 3 nights live, but it was a live stream. So it was from everybody's home. I had 2 people in Erie, 1 person in Michigan, 1 in Wisconsin, and 1 in Ohio. So it was a fully digital collaboration, which I thought was really the benefit of that platform at the time, because people were willing to engage with something because everyone's mostly at home anyways. And it was something that we spent the time to put together like a theater piece, but from a digital perspective. So the subversions of the expectation was hinging on the platform itself. The live stream platform culture didn't typically host scripted events. When you go to a live stream platform, it's somebody there live engaging with everybody in a way that you can tell. Oh, I've made a little comment. I love your hair. Oh, thank you, so-and-so viewer. Thanks for that. I'm going to continue playing this video game. You don't go onto that platform and go, I'm going to do, Romeo and Juliet. That's just not the expectation of the platform, the cultural points of that. I said when something is live online, it is for entertainment purposes, but the cultural expectation is that the unscripted, unfiltered event with the added expectation of interaction between viewer, chatter, and the entertainer themselves. So you're just supposed to be a part of what is happening, and it's not part of that. But then the reverse of it is this was also a subversion of theatrical expectations. It was live. We were doing a scripted event. We were doing something that had a storyline. We weren't making it up as we went. And the expectations of theater experiences, what really played a part is the people who were expecting a theater experience through a digital medium had a hard time, and this was plenty of conversations I had. Usually in theater, anything that is filmed is a preservation, and it's not made to be part of the experience. If you film a theater event, you're archiving it. You're saying, this is just what already existed here. We're not playing with the cameras. But then adding that into the mix, it became, so I directed the first show that Drama Shop did digitally, a show called Silent Sky, and it was a stage reading, so we didn't do much other than just read the script. But I was able to direct from a filmmaker's perspective these theater performers. And I constantly had to be like, I need you to tone down your face because the camera is right here. Because they're not used to something being that close to see them. Because they're projecting to the back of the audience. And I'm like, we can just do little eyebrow movements. We don't need to project because there's nowhere to project to. And so being able to say, hey, and we can take our volume down. We don't need to go all the way to the back. We're talking, the microphone that you have is right next to you. And it was an interesting subversion within the creation process of me saying, okay, I'm taking what you expect of a theater performance and we're taking it to a level of film, but you still have to be present and live every single time, every rehearsal, every stream. And the conversation became then, what is the benefit, and even with this, what is the benefit of doing this live versus just filming it? We could have all gotten on Zoom and filmed it and call it a day and put it up on YouTube. This is on YouTube, but it's actually it's a very heavily edited version of it. I added it's a sci-fi piece, so I added a lot more sci-fi elements, which I couldn't do live. But that was part of it. I couldn't do certain things live because of the limitations of just my processing of my computer. There's only so many graphics you can level before your computer is like, all right, we're done. The benefit at a certain level was internal. We got a lot of good community out of it. We got a lot of good just spending time with each other in a time that was weird. But the other thing that allowed it to feel beneficial, and I don't even know if beneficial is the right word, but at least why are we doing it live versus why are we not filming it, is the expectation of the platform we were on was that we were live. So you knew that everybody was in their home doing it live, whether it was on Zoom or on Twitch or any kind of streaming platform. The viewer could trust that it was live because of the platform itself. We're not going to go on this platform and do something that's pre-recorded because we've created this, like, it is live, unless you're lying to somebody, in which you can, but we weren't. And from the creation side of it, the making it live it was organic. The performances were slightly varied every night, and it was a way to create theater without it being theater. And so we were subverting the expectation of performance itself. But it's a great, weird combination of a bunch of things, and in the whole whirlwind of it, I really like doing it. I would do it again if I could. I might, who knows, knowing me. But it's a great example I use for how do you take the expectations of platforms, of medium, and of content. Because I had to work the content around the limitations of the platforms we had, of the access to materials we had. Everybody was in their own homes. They had to set design their own homes. So I had to sit there on several rehearsals and be like, hang that rug up on your wall and put this prop that I mailed to you in the mail in front of the camera. And how do you create something that I can't even touch? I was creating things virtually with people that were really there, and we were all in the same space. And how are we creating a story where we feel connected to each other, or we can't reach each other? So it was a lot of taking something that is meant to be a very physical, in-person experience and digitizing it. And that's a great example I have of, like, you can do anything you want, first of all. But also the expectations were all over the place. Because we have expectations of what theater is. That's not theater. We have expectations of what live streaming is. Well, we didn't have anybody engaging with anybody. No one was like, hi, chat, how are you doing? Thanks for commenting on my dress, because we were all live in this moment. So then how was that beneficial? And then even from there, if you watch the VOD, that is it's a different piece technically. It's the remnants of the live stream, but it's not live, it's edited. I've taken both nights, or however many nights I had, and spliced them all together. And so then that conversation is part of that as well. So I really like this piece as a fun way to talk about you don't have to do what is expected, but also what does engagement mean for it? My VOD doesn't have like a ton of views on it, but also I released it 2 years after I did it, the piece. So was that part of it? Because I didn't do it right away? So I'm gonna move on a little bit. I wanna talk about, I have a lot more slides. I can breeze through them, but I wanted to talk a little bit about how the questions that I posed earlier apply to different concepts. So we're gonna talk about pasta, because I like pasta, and I've done several videos and other things about pasta. And it gives me an easy in for this particular situation. But I'm gonna talk about concepts. I have 4 concepts, I think, in here, and I'm gonna talk about approaching the medium, approaching the concept, what questions, what things influence things. All of the concepts have a narrative, comedic leaning, but there's so many different ways that you can approach a concept, a medium, what you do, what you make is all part of it. All right, I've made a fake, I say fake, it's real in a way, it's like a meta reel of, this is a projection piece. It's kind of projected, but like it's a piece within a piece. It's a piece I'm called it macaroni, loop projection of macaroni that goes back and forth. And I'm asking myself, the version of me that exists that's made this for real, I am asking myself, what do I want the viewers to take away from this? And I'm saying, okay, as I'm moving forward, I want an examination of the influence of commercialized media on your perception of food as an audience member. How do you feel about food when it's given to you in a very glowy way? How do you think about food when you see it filmed? Hungry. That's a part of it, though. The expectation, you're like, oh yeah, I want this because I've seen it. They made it look good. They put it in slow motion, all of that stuff. And maybe that's part of the conversation when I'm thinking of like, oh, I need other projection pieces. I want to really make you consider it. Okay, now this piece over here has other things. I also want people to like repeating images. We love repeating images. Patterns are great. Everyone loves a pattern. But then why do you like a pattern? Why are we thinking about that? What's the pattern of pasta? Why is it so fun to look at? When I look at this one for too long, because I made it, I see all the cracks in the pasta. So then I'm thinking about the imperfections in the patterns, because each pasta piece is different. Each pasta piece has its own little thing going on. Some of them are weirdly shaped. Some of them are, so I've created something where you can kind of examine, are we even thinking about it as pasta anymore? And that's what I would like, again, intentionally, as I'm making this piece, that's what I want them to take away from it. And then the third point I have is like, I like pasta. I'm hungry. Like, great, I want you to take that away from it. I want you to be thinking about anything. Question of who am I making this for? In this example, we'll say that the installation is something I conceptualized, in which case I am making it to examine inwards my relationship with food and the imagery of food on film. But I could be making this in tandem with a specific experience or collaboration, in which case I would be making it for an intended audience. So if somebody had asked me, I need you to make this piece, but it's gonna go in my cafe, okay, cool, it's very specifically for this intended audience. And then the question, what is achievable? This comes from my background in film, specifically, of when you create something, you have access to specific resources. Now, if you want a specific resource you don't have access to, but you can get it through time or money, you can expand what you have access to. But what is achievable is only part of that. And when you think about what is achievable, that influences the content that you're making, whether or not intentionally. So in this example piece, I have access to certain materials, and therefore the scaling of it is limited to what I have, and the creation of it is limited to the tools I already have at my disposal. So if I was to use this, which I wouldn't because it doesn't fully go with what I want, but this was shot on my iPhone with a bucket and pasta outside, and I just kind of shifted it back and forth. But if I was wanting to make it more intentionally, I would get a higher quality camera. I would get maybe some kind of like air pump to like make it move on its own, like they do with sand in film kind of deal. But that would be part of like, I want that particular imagery, and those are the resources available to me, and that's what I'm trying to make. And then what external ideas am I being influenced by? I'm being influenced by commercial content, personal relationships, and exposure to the subject itself. When I make a pot of pasta, now I'm thinking about it. Who will be the unintended audience because of the medium? In this example, we're saying our unintended audience will be the folks who are not expecting to participate in an installation experience. And that I have from experience. So if someone walks in and goes, what the fuck is this? That's your unintended audience. And what are they getting out of it? And what influences it? And that's my favorite thing, because especially with installation pieces, when someone comes in and goes, I didn't get it. It's like, okay, cool. What did you get out of it? What did you experience? What emotions did you feel? And if the emotion is confusion, that's still something. That's still creating something. And then what medium best serves your idea? In a perfect world, I think this idea would be served by a huge looping projection. I want viewers to be confronted by the scale of the imagery in order to examine their own perception of the food. So that's what I'm thinking of, and that's what's influencing the piece as far as the medium itself. So I'm thinking, okay, I want a big, large-scale projection. That is my medium. Okay, now I know I'm going to see the cracks in the pasta. That's influencing the piece I'm making itself. Okay, the scale makes people get overwhelmed with the thought of food and how they feel about it. Okay, that's influencing it. But if I change the medium, it did not load in, I hate that. Now we loaded in. If I change the medium, what changes? So let's say I don't have a perfect world. I don't have the capability to project as large as I would like, or the projector I have access to is not strong enough, doesn't have enough lumens. But in this instance, I know I have accessible to a small tube TV. I have larger ones too, but I have many of them. I know I have this. So that's what I'm going to use to showcase the work. What changes? So that is really what this all comes down to. What changes when you change the medium, when you change the concept, when you change something? So your expectation of the medium. Older viewers or anybody who grew up with a tube TV might have a sense of nostalgia. That was a huge conversation I had with a lot of people. The sense of nostalgia of the tube TVs versus the flat screens versus her projection pieces. Or the expectation of it. When they see a tube TV, they expect black and white. They expect to feel like they're seeing Disney films that were on VHS. Like the expectation of it is what they've already come into it. They're looking at this thinking of those things, even if that's not what you've put in front of them. They're already feeling that and experiencing that because of their expectations of what it is. Same with even a billboard, right? If we were to take this and put it on a billboard and I didn't put any words on top of it, the expectation would be like, I'm being advertised something. And then with nothing past that, you'd be like, what is this? What am I experiencing? Why am I seeing a looping video of pasta in the middle of the day when I'm driving down the street? It changes the way you engage with it and experience it. So everything influences what the consumption is like. And then emotional response, like I said, everything ever made is emotional because that's how we experience the world. But every piece of media elicits an emotional response. The change of scale might take the emotional response from inspired and reflective to wistful and curious. That's why it's important to examine what you want the audience to take away from the experience. So with a big, large projection, looping video, huge, we're standing there, we're looking up at it, we're thinking, oh wow, I'm overwhelmed by how big this pasta is or how much I feel hungry or because it's huge. That changes when I'm made a little tiny TV. I'm feeling a different set of emotions because I'm seeing it on a different scale. And again, like I had way back there in the presentation, scale plays a part of it. Just your emotional response. Whether or not that's the intention, how you feel about it, scale changes it, 100%. This is a real thing I've made called Al Dente Origins. It's a fake trailer for a pasta superhero movie. It's like 1 minute and 15 seconds. It's on my YouTube channel. But this is a great way for me to kind of use as an example because I've made it, so I can talk about process with this one. What kind of story did I want to tell? I wanted to do a comedic take on the superhero genre that uses the absurdity of pasta to do so. Who am I making this for? The honest answer is myself. I wanted to do it, so I made it. But I knew that people were going to see it, so my broader answer is folks who enjoy my content and like the idea of a pasta-based holiday, because that's kind of the precipice of why I was doing all of this. And then what external ideas am I being influenced by? Superhero movies, pasta puns. But superhero movies was a huge part of it. I looked at a lot of Marvel stuff. I took knockoff Marvel text for my title of it. That was part of the process. When I was writing it, when I was shooting it, I'm specifically being influenced by these things. So then what is achievable? I did very quick costume builds, props that I already had or were easy to make, locations that were central to me and didn't travel outside of Erie. I utilized skills that other people had because I could kind of collaborate, work together. We made an air-powered PVC pasta gun, which was not really, you couldn't really tell it in the final piece, but I just shot a big wad of spaghetti at one of my actors. And what did I want viewers to take away from this? I wanted them to be entertained. I didn't particularly feel like I needed them to examine how they felt about Marvel superhero movies, but at a certain level, there is a commentary on superhero movies and blockbusters as a whole, because I think they're ridiculous at this point, so it was part of it. That's what I'm being influenced by, is my thoughts and feelings on those. What about the medium influences the piece? I know that this piece will not be played at a large scale and will most likely be watched on a mobile device of some kinds. This means I'm influenced by other similar pieces at the same scale. I feel comfortable cutting corners and making a quick story that tells a joke. I didn't spend a lot of time thinking I need to make this particular piece of jewelry look perfect to go on this person because it's going to be a 2-second shot that's not very close. So I'm knowing that the scale at which I'm making it influences the process. And then who is the unintended audience because of the medium? Anyone who the YouTube algorithm decided to share the video to, anyone who found it via social media sharing. Somebody went, oh, watch this video Britty made. It's weird. It's 1 minute long. Okay, cool. I don't know you, but now you've seen my thing. Excuse me. And this one, the video player won't load as well. Hooray. That's okay. This is another piece that I did. Again, another YouTube video. It is titled just like that, with all the capitalization specifically. That is the piece when you go on YouTube, what it looks like. It is a cultural clickbait style video. I put clickbait in asterisks because the term clickbait in a broader sense refers to something that has a title that draws you in, that hooks you in, and then it lies to you. It doesn't tell you the whole thing. It's made to just for you to click on. But in the kind of common vernacular, it's used to describe a video with this certain style of title and the thumbnail and the imagery and the content. The content is often unusual, but does follow through with the title's description, usually at the end of the video, so you watch all the way through. So that's the clickbait, but it's not a lie. I have an example of, there's a channel called How Ridiculous, and they have a video titled Giant Bouncy Ball, in all caps, dropped from 165-meter dam. And I watched it, and they do drop a giant bouncy ball, but it is the last thing they drop. They have like 5 other things they drop from the dam. So that's kind of like the cultural style of it, of clickbait rather than specifically. But I was like, I want people to watch this video where me and my friend use tomato sauce and pesto to paint with. There's no particular intention from it other than I think it's funny and it's related to pasta. So that's part of it. What kind of story do you want to tell? What happens when you try to paint a picture with pasta toppings? And I found that out through the making of the video. You can paint a little bit. With pesto is the best one I think we found. Who am I making this for? At the time, I was making it for anyone who was interested in my yearly pasta videos as a prequel to the main video. What do you want the viewer to take away from this? Entertainment they can enjoy either fully engaged or half aware. Again, I know people were going to put this on in the background, so I wanted to make it fun, interesting, but not put a lot of kind of stake in, you have to be watching this. You can tune in when we start talking about how ridiculous the frog looks. And what medium best serves your idea? This idea was specifically created to be consumed through a YouTube lens. I didn't really make it with any other medium intention in mind, and I don't think it would work in any other medium. Because it was such a live, when we did it, we weren't planning anything. We sat down, I said, here's all your tools, and then we made something. You could, in theory, I suppose, make it a live performance piece if you wanted, but the intention of it completely changes because then you're doing something that's entertainment, but also has some kind of like message if you wanted. But then we lose the aspect of it being something that plays in the background because I've made something live. So there was a specific intention for it of I want to make this piece this way. Can you change the medium? So it's just what I was just saying. In this instant, I felt that it is impossible to change the medium. It is a video that is intended to be self-contained, so it could not easily translate to a larger scale episodic content. I'm not going to make how to paint with pasta for 50 episodes. It's an unscripted process, so the process dictates the outcome, and it is not intentionally made to challenge the viewer. What happens if you change the medium? Then you have to go back to the core concept and ask yourself the question of what about the medium will influence the piece and what medium best serves your idea? Maybe the core idea of it was about the ridiculousness of using non-traditional items to create works of art. This concept could be executed in several video formats as well as live performances, so then you need to ask yourself what you want the viewer to take away from it. Perhaps you want them to examine why they feel the way they do about specific methods of painting, a valid question to ask. I feel this way about oil painting. Okay, cool, I'm using cheese. Now how do you feel about it? Like, it changes your thought process there, so that's what we want you to think about that. Why do you feel X way about painting? Okay, cool, let's do from that. But in this instance, you're going to enable the viewer to reflect inward with a medium, that there is some audience expectation of interpretation. So you have to know of what platform or medium you can use to challenge the viewer if you're going to challenge them. They have to already have a little bit of expectation. If you try to challenge somebody out the gate when they're not expecting it, they're not going to engage with it. It's like if I walked down the street and went, you're like, I don't want that. Like, it changes the interaction you're having. So you know that that's part of it. And in this particular instance, making a clickbait style content in any other format changes the intention of it, and then you have to be intentional. And sometimes being non-intentional about something is fine. I can make any kind of content where I'm like, I'm just gonna see what happens, but that's the process. And so but the process goes into the medium. I'm going to see what happens when I film pasta for an hour. Okay, where am I putting it? What am I doing with it? Where's it going? What does it need to look like? So I think that's important questions to ask. This is another example I was talking about, like Twitch as the platform. This was I I did this one year I just made pasta. I just took my little pasta maker and made it, and people were having a grand time. We were having a good time. But it was live. I was just having a conversation with people. I wasn't doing anything scripted. I wasn't doing anything trying to challenge anybody. I was just like, hey, come hang out with me. We're live. We're just doing stuff. But I'm engaging in a way that clarifies I am live, that clarifies that this is now a conversation we're having. And then there was platform expectations because I was on Twitch at the time. And again, not a lot of people are doing this on Twitch. There's the thing about Twitch as a platform is you can kind of choose what category you're going under. And if you're not under a specific video game, you're usually under, what's it called? Just chatting is their catch-all category for everything else. Which means the culture of that platform is not like, oh, I can have a cooking stream or I can have a, dancing stream. Like you have to fall under just chatting if you're anything else. So there's already that expectation there. And then the influence of this means if you break those expectations, your unidentified audience, the people that stumble across it, don't know how to engage with what you're doing. I don't think anybody that stumbled across this would be like, what the fuck is this? But they would be like, this is not a video game. I don't think I'm going to stay. We're going to use another example of kind of expectations of, content here. This is a made-up piece that I called Pasta Do, because I'm ridiculous like that. But we're saying this is a dark comedy episodic show about a group of teenagers who have been mailed a mysterious note accompanied by pasta. What kind of story do I want to tell? I want an approach to episodic mystery that has moments of levity but takes itself entirely seriously. This idea will not work if it is done in irony. So if we're doing this and we are really hinging on the pasta puns, we're going to lose the people that are feeling like this is actually a story we want to listen to. And this is actually a process I found works really well for my comedy piece. Any of my comedy pieces is if I take it entirely seriously, it's funnier. If I go into that superhero comedy and I tell my performers, I need you to be the most heroic superhero of all time, and yes, you are throwing pasta at this person, but you have to take it so seriously, then when the piece plays out, you're looking at it thinking, all right, I believe this superhero, okay, there's pasta flung at somebody's face. All right, cool. So if in this example, right, that's the kind of story we're wanting to tell. Who am I making this for? Let's say I'm making it for fans of dark comedy, murder mysteries, and quippy young adult-centered narratives. What is achievable? Now we get to begin a conversation about scaling the idea based on the medium, influence of the medium, and what best serves the story. In this instance, I think the idea itself can take place over the medium. So perhaps I feel so strongly that the best way to tell this story is with a high-budget, high-concept production through traditional television means. That's what I feel like the idea is telling me. I would pursue the idea with the intention of having it optioned and piloted on television or large corporate streaming services because the narrative I have built has been around the medium it is being created for. Perhaps I feel strongly that the idea, not the medium, is the driving force of the piece, and the creation of it in any episodic form is the most important element. Then I would begin to ask my questions of what is achievable through budget, time, performance abilities while pursuing a web series route. Or perhaps I think, all right, I'll even scale it even more down. I'll make it episodic for short form content. Some people are doing that on places like TikTok and Instagram. They're making whole series that take place in 30 seconds every episode. So whatever I feel like the idea serves the medium. And so again, we kind of get this cyclical like medium, idea, concept, medium, what we want to pursue. And from the perspective of somebody who I really prefer taking the idea to its base level, I think I want to make this idea. I feel really strongly about this idea. I'm going to go with achievable to me. I'm going to start working on a web series. I'm going to scrape together my $5 on a shoestring. I'm going to make this work. I'm going to do it in Erie. I'm not going anywhere else. I'm going to do this in a timeline of 1 year. That's what I want to pursue. But there are so many ways you could pursue it. You could say, I want this idea to be on TV. I think that this needs to be a Netflix show. Okay, write it, campaign for it, crowdfund for it, whatever that process looks like. But the presentation of it, the expectations of the media, the idea, the concept influence how you're going about this process. Here's another one. This is really interesting because I've been doing podcasts for, like 7 years now at this point. There's so many different things you can do with podcasts that you can't do with visual mediums. Audio-only mediums change so many things. So we'll say I'm making a narrative podcast called Soup to Sour about a pasta restaurant run by aliens. For whatever reason, I decided that was what I was going with. I think it's fun because then you can talk about, like, the aliens don't know what pasta means, and now we can have that conversation. Who am I making this for? People who enjoy listening to their stories, people who are going to put it on in the car or like audiobooks or any of that. Folks who are into comedic light sci-fi, that's my audience there. I think that this idea is best served by an audio because I'm answering the question, what is achievable, because I can expand that through an audio-only format. I don't have to pay for visual effects makeup to be the primary focus of it. I can say, this is an alien. Imagine an alien in your mind. And now you've imagined an alien in your mind, and I can kind of expand upon it. I personally think that anybody who has an idea and they really, 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 really want to get it made and it is way beyond their scope is to do an audio version of it. Because if you find that right group of people who like it, they'll visualize it for you. They'll draw it, they'll make paintings of it, they'll write, narrative fiction of it, and you can kind of expand your little world, but you don't have to worry too much about your limitations as a filmmaker in that particular aspect. And then what about the medium influences the piece? Listeners are interpreting the visuals on their own, which leaves plenty of room for audience interpretation. So maybe you don't have a clear idea of what the alien looks like. Now you don't have to. You can say, this is an alien, whatever that means to you. And then a lot of narrative pieces rely on when you're making an audio piece, you do have to rely on heavy-handed narrative clues to tell the story rather than visual components. So that is something about that medium that influences the piece. Again, you can't make a dialogue-free podcast. I suppose you can, but then we're reading an audiobook. We're narrating all of the stage direction. We're not able to let your eyes do the interpreting, your ears have to do the interpreting. So it changes things. I can keep going on these fun ideas. I don't have to. So you tell me if you want me to keep going on I think I have like a couple more ideas that are like, each medium changes things. Everything gets changed every time you create a new concept, a new idea, and a new medium. So this one is on stage, but we've got visuals to it, and we're influenced by YouTube, we're influenced by food blogs, we're influenced by people who want to see contemporary plays, this kind of idea. I think this one would be fun. I think all my ideas are fun, but that's a whole other conversation. So let's say that this is what I'm doing. I'm doing a one-act play about a food blogger who struggles with an eating disorder, and one of the driving creative forces is the use of an overhead camera that projects the food that is set on the table onto the stage. I want viewers to take away from this their experience of a live video. Perhaps at some points during the show, the projection is not actually a live camera feed of the food, but it instead is an edited video that is carefully timed to look live. This could give an opportunity to showcase the main character's personal relationship with food by skewing the perception of what is real. Then we're talking about expectations of live versus recorded versus what you think is going to happen when you see a video on stage in a projected space. The question of what medium do you think best serves your idea? While it is possible to translate this idea to a short film or feature-length film, the real-time emotional response to seeing a live feed of food in the context of a performance is important to this concept, and therefore putting this on stage best serves the idea. So it's really about like what we're trying to get out of it. Sometimes we're trying to get some kind of emotional response, and sometimes we're just trying to get a pasta superhero. So it's all whatever you're trying to get out of it. All right, that's the end of my pasta. So going back to approaching the medium, you got to think about expectations. You got to think about the physical aspects. You got to think about your concepts itself, and you got to think about your audience and the way that they're interpreting it. And all of this you can think about and go, I don't need it, and do whatever you want. But it does influence it whether or not you're consciously thinking, okay, I'm making this piece, therefore the audience is thinking this, therefore I need to make this. or if you just know that when you're making something, sometimes people are going to go, what the fuck is this? That's what now at this point in my life, that's my goal. I want people to look at the things I do and go, what the fuck is this? But that is a different conversation. But I think that it's so, so important to examine the way that people experience everything that they encounter as far as mediums, as far as that goes. And the other thing that I have conversations with people a lot about is how things have changed, how we've changed interpreting mediums, how everything, we're at a point, being blatantly honest, COVID changed the way we experience entertainment in general. We stopped going to movie theaters for obvious reasons. Now are people going back? Are we doing large scale? Are we making stuff for streaming services? Are we watching it whatever scale we're watching it at? The digital theater is a great example of that. And then we also have the endless scrolling culture is a big, big, big thing that I talk about forever and onwards in a day, but we don't need to talk about that right now, because that's not the point. But the point is that that influences what you make. Whether or not you're making something large scale, small scale, whatever you're making, is the medium, the culture, and the way people engage with it is so influential, whether or not you're intending it is a big part of it. So thanks for listening to me ramble for an hour and a half. I appreciate it. I have so many thoughts about all of these things all the time. So you can always message me and be like, tell me more about your thoughts about these things, and I will tell you. I have so many thoughts. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you again. Thank you.